video from a Chicago police body camera was taken inside Smollett's home in January, at the time when he told police he was attacked. It's part of nearly 1,200 files, including more than 90 hours of footage, all newly released by the department.
New video shows the Osundaro brothers walking toward the direction of Smollett's apartment building, and in this video, you can clearly see a flash of a red-brimmed hat. Also, the new video shows Smollett walking in the middle of the street in the same white sweater.
What Jussie Smollett really did was truly terrible. He said he was targeted, attacked, and humiliated in the streets of Chicago. The story caught fire overnight.
Developing now, we're learning more about the brutal attack that sent Empire actor Jussie Smollett to the hospital.
Chicago police have now opened a hate crime investigation after the 36-year-old was beaten by men who shouted racial and homophobic slurs.
But something about it didn't sit right. The cameras, the timing, the details. And when investigators started peeling it back, what they uncovered changed everything.
A source told our CBS Chicago station WBBM, quote, when the letter didn't get enough attention, Smollett concocted the staged attack.
The truth was disappointing. And the fallout? Still playing out years later. This story isn't just about Jussie. It's about power, perception, and what happens when the lie is louder than the truth. It was January 29, 2019. Jussie Smollett, best known for his role on the hit TV show Empire, walked into a Chicago police station with a story that would dominate national headlines within hours. He said it happened just after 2 a.m. He'd gone out to get food from a Subway restaurant in the middle of the night when two men approached him in the freezing cold. According to Smollett, they yelled racial and homophobic slurs, poured bleach on him, beat him, and wrapped a rope around his neck like a noose. And then came the line that would supercharge the entire narrative. This is MAGA country. Smollett told officers he had been on the phone with his manager, Frank Gatson, during the attack. And when police arrived at his apartment around 2:40 a.m., Smollett still had the noose around his neck. Though later he admitted he had removed it, then put it back on before police showed up, allegedly on Gatson's advice.
This video from a Chicago police body camera was taken inside Smollett's home in January, at the time when he told police he was attacked. It's part of nearly 1,200 files, including more than 90 hours of footage, all newly released by the department.
For the next few days, the narrative was clear. Jussie was a victim of a hate crime, and America needed to take it seriously. But beneath that media storm, the Chicago Police Department was already noticing inconsistencies. Smollett said one of the attackers was white, but as they gathered surveillance footage, they couldn't find any suspects matching that description. They found grainy images of two men bundled up in hoodies and winter gear, but their faces weren't visible. Worse, the camera near the alleged attack location was facing the wrong direction and caught nothing. Still, at this stage, Smollett's version of events hadn't been challenged publicly. The media didn't know about the threatening letter that had arrived a week earlier at the Empire set, addressed to Smollett. It featured a stick figure hanging from a tree with the words, "Smollett, you will die," cut out from a magazine. The envelope also contained a white powder, later identified as Tylenol. At the time, Smollett claimed the two events were linked. He told police he was being targeted for speaking out against the Trump administration, and many in the public agreed. The moment was politically charged. It fit into ongoing discussions about hate crimes, racism, and LGBTQ+ discrimination. But there were already doubts forming behind closed doors. One NBC News employee said she had parked her car around the corner from where the incident allegedly happened and didn't hear a thing. No shouting, no struggle. Then came the turning point. Surveillance footage showed two men buying ski masks, gloves, and a red hat just days before the alleged attack. And financial records showed a $3,500 payment from Smollett to the two men. They weren't random strangers. They were brothers, Abimbola and Olabinjo Osundairo, both Nigerian-American and former extras on Empire. And once police raided their home on February 13th, the story started to collapse. Just 2 weeks after Jussie Smollett's emotional police report rocked the country, the case took a turn that no one expected, at least not in public. On February 13, 2019, Chicago police raided the home of Abimbola and Olabinjo Osundairo. These weren't random suspects. They were familiar faces to Smollett, extras on Empire, gym buddies, and more importantly, they were linked to a $3,500 payment from Smollett, disguised as a fitness and nutrition plan. Inside the brothers' home, police found key evidence: the rope used in the attack, purchased from a hardware store, ski masks, gloves, and a red hat bought just days before, and surveillance footage of them buying the items together. The Osundairo brothers were brought in for questioning and quickly flipped. They told police everything. The attack had been staged. Smollett had planned it. He had even driven them to the exact location days before for what they called a dress rehearsal.
I was down to do it because if we do this for him, he could probably help us out with our careers.
Their confession changed everything. Smollett's timeline began to fall apart. Police no longer treated him as a victim. They named him as a suspect. On February 20th, he was indicted on a felony charge of filing a false police report. The evidence was overwhelming. Staged attack, fake suspects, even fake dialogue. All orchestrated for one reason: publicity. According to police, Smollett was frustrated that the threatening letter sent to Empire hadn't generated enough media attention. So he allegedly escalated things.
Now, a source told our CBS Chicago station WBBM, quote, when the letter didn't get enough attention, Smollett concocted the staged attack.
The damage was immediate. Chicago's police chief, Eddie T. Johnson, held a press conference that same day, publicly blasting Smollett. This stunt was orchestrated by Smollett because he was dissatisfied with his salary. He concocted a story that gained public sympathy and attention. But then came another twist. On March 26th, just over a month after the indictment, all charges were dropped. Smollett agreed to forfeit his $10,000 bond and perform community service. And that was it. No trial, no conviction. Just a closed-door deal that left the public, police, and even the mayor of Chicago stunned. What was supposed to be a clear-cut case suddenly became a legal mess. And the backlash wasn't just from law enforcement. It came from all directions. The city of Chicago wasn't done. If prosecutors wouldn't hold Smollett accountable, the city would. In April 2019, they sued him for the $130,000 spent on the investigation. Smollett didn't back down. He filed a countersuit claiming he was the one being wronged, publicly smeared by officials who didn't want to admit their mistakes. The legal battle was far from over, and while Smollett tried to move on, Chicago was preparing a second wave of consequences. This time from a special prosecutor who wasn't about to let the case slide. After the public outrage over dropped charges, Chicago officials weren't willing to let it end there. In February 2020, after nearly a year of silence, a special prosecutor named Dan K. Webb stepped in and changed everything. He re-indicted Jussie Smollett on 6 new counts of disorderly conduct tied to the staged hate crime. This wasn't just about punishing Smollett. This was about restoring trust in a justice system that had been publicly humiliated. The trial began in late 2021, and for the first time, the world heard the full story under oath. The Osundairo brothers took the stand. They described in detail how Smollett orchestrated the hoax. They told the jury about the planning, the script, the dry run. They said Smollett instructed them on how to shout racial slurs, pour bleach, and tie the rope, but not too tightly, so it could be easily removed. He even gave them notes on where to stand and how to escape the scene on camera. Smollett's defense team pushed back, arguing that the brothers were lying to protect themselves. But the paper trail didn't lie. There were checks, surveillance videos, phone calls and texts right before and after the incident. And despite Smollett's insistence that the $3,500 was payment for fitness training, the timeline painted a different picture. During closing arguments, the prosecution told the jury, This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a miscommunication. This was a performance. And the jury agreed. On December 9th, 21, Smollett was convicted on 5 out of 6 felony counts of disorderly conduct for making false police reports. It was a crushing blow. He had gone from an Emmy-nominated actor to a convicted felon in front of the entire country. But even then, he didn't back down. At sentencing on March 10, 2022, Smollett stunned the courtroom. He stood up, raised his voice, and declared,
"Jail time. I am not suicidal. I am not suicidal.
Stop laughing about Blaxcellence.
I am not suicidal, and I am innocent. I could have said that I was guilty a long time ago."
The judge wasn't moved. Smollett was sentenced to 150 days in Cook County Jail, 30 months of probation, and ordered to pay over $120,000 in restitution, plus a $25,000 fine. Just 5 days later, his legal team filed an emergency appeal, arguing that the sentence was too harsh and that Smollett faced danger in jail. And in a rare move, an appellate court agreed. He was released on bond on March 16, 2022, pending the outcome of the appeal. To some, it looked like Smollett had beaten the system again. To others, it was just delaying the inevitable. Meanwhile, public opinion had hardened. The sympathy was gone. The support from politicians and celebrities had vanished. Smollett had become a punchline, a symbol of manipulation, a cautionary tale. But the biggest twist in this saga was still coming, and when it hit, years later, it would throw the entire case back into controversy. By 24, most people had moved on from the Jussie Smollett case, at least on the surface. He had become a cautionary tale in Hollywood, a warning sign in politics, and an easy target in late-night comedy. But behind closed doors, his legal team had been quietly working to undo everything. That November, they got what they wanted. The Illinois Supreme Court issued a stunning decision. Jussie Smollett's conviction was overturned. The court agreed with his defense. Smollett's Fifth Amendment rights had been violated. Their argument? He had already reached a deal in 2019. Perform community service, forfeit his $10,000 bond, and the case would be dropped. Going after him again years later for the same charges, that counted as double jeopardy. The ruling sent shockwaves through the legal world, but the reaction from the public wasn't celebration. It was confusion, followed by outrage. Even Special Prosecutor Dan Webb had to issue a public statement. This ruling has nothing to do with Mr. Smollett's innocence. The Illinois Supreme Court did not find any error with the overwhelming evidence presented at trial. In fact, Mr. Smollett did not even challenge the evidence. He only argued procedure. In other words, he got off on a technicality. The conviction was erased from the books, but not from memory. He had served only a few days in jail before being released on bond. Now, with the conviction gone, he wouldn't serve another minute. But this didn't feel like justice. Not to the city of Chicago, which had spent years and over $130,000 chasing the truth. Not to the police officers who had worked overtime pulling security footage and pouring through receipts. And not to the public who still remembered that night in January 2019 and the headlines that followed. The conviction may have disappeared, but the doubt didn't. To this day, there are still people who defend Smollett, who say he was targeted, railroaded, and scapegoated. But far more people see it as what it was: a fraud that wasted resources, damaged credibility, and made it harder for real victims to be believed. And that damage couldn't be overturned. Because Jussie Smollett didn't just stage a crime, he staged a narrative. And that narrative, once shattered, could never be repaired. Even with his conviction overturned, Jussie Smollett didn't exactly walk back into the industry with open arms. By the time the court reversed the ruling in 2024, the damage had already been done. His role on Empire was gone. He had been written out of the final episodes during the show's 6th and final season. The producers didn't make a public show of it, just quietly cut him off. And since then, no major film or TV roles have followed. The phone stopped ringing. Behind the scenes, he kept working, just not the way he used to. In 2021, Smollett released his directorial debut, B-Boy Blues, an adaptation of a Black LGBTQ+ love story. The film got modest attention in indie circuits, but it couldn't undo the cloud that followed his name. He tried to rebuild, but the stigma stuck. And by 2023, he checked into an outpatient rehab facility, what his team called a step toward healing after an extremely difficult few years. Smollett later told People magazine that his arrest on February 21, 2019, was the darkest day of his life. That's when everything clicked to me of what was happening. A lot of things tested my mental, but one thing I never lost. I never started thinking that I was somebody I'm not. He still maintains his innocence.
Pissed off.
What is it that has you so angry? Is it the attackers?
It's the attackers, but it's also the attacks. It's like, you know, at first it was a thing of like, listen, if I tell the truth, then that's it, because it's the truth.
But to most of the public, the damage feels permanent. The people who once supported him, mostly gone. Taraji P. Henson has been one of the few to stand by him, even comparing his situation to Emmett Till's in a now infamous Free Jussie post. His sister, Journey Smollett, also spoke out after his sentencing, declaring, "Jussie is innocent." But public perception has moved on, and moved against him. He's been mocked in rap lyrics, comedy skits, news panels, and even by politicians. And whether he likes it or not, his name is now shorthand for staged deception. Even so, Smollett hasn't fully given up. In interviews, he says he's still working on music, film, and building a future. His newest project, The Lost Holiday, tells the story of a man raising his adopted daughter after the tragic death of his partner. Fictional, but clearly personal. And beneath it all, he says there's still one thing he's holding on for. "I pray to have a child. I can't imagine my life ending without having been a father. That's why I'm still in the game. That's why I'm fighting." He insists that one day when his child looks back on all of this, they'll be proud. "I want them to see that I got through it, that I didn't fold, that I kept trying to leave the world just a little bit better than I found it." But even if that day comes, and even if Jussie Smollett finds peace, the controversy that followed him will always be part of the story. Because in the eyes of many, he didn't just fall from grace. He lit the stage on fire on the way down. Long before the staged hate crime made Jussie Smollett a household name for all the wrong reasons, his record already had red flags, quiet scandals that faded in the shadow of what would come in 2019. Take 2007. That year, Smollett was arrested in Los Angeles for driving under the influence. But it wasn't just a DUI. When police pulled him over, Smollett gave them a fake name, his brother's name. He later pled no contest to 3 misdemeanor charges, providing false information to law enforcement, driving under the influence, and driving without a valid license. The punishment was light, just a fine and 3 years of probation, but the incident revealed something that would echo more loudly a decade later, a pattern of bending the truth. Then came Empire. By 2015, Smollett was one of the breakout stars of the hit Fox series, praised for his portrayal of Jamal Lyon, an openly gay musician navigating a homophobic music industry. But even that role wasn't free from controversy. In one season, Jamal was suddenly written into a romantic storyline with a woman, something that confused and angered some fans who felt it undermined LGBTQ+ representation. Smollett defended it, saying it was to create a conversation about sexual fluidity in the gay community. But critics accused the show of trying to straightwash its most visible gay character for ratings. Anyway, after the city of Chicago sued him to recover over $130,000 spent on the police investigation, Smollett fired back, filing a countersuit alleging malicious prosecution. By 2024, both sides reached a settlement. The details weren't made public, but one thing was clear: neither side fully backed down. Even after the conviction was overturned, that lawsuit remained part of the record. A reminder that this wasn't just about public perception or a media scandal. It was about money, reputation, and a city that refused to let it slide. And in the end, all of these forgotten moments, the DUI, the false identity, the strange creative choices, the suspicious letter, they all tell the same story. That long before Jussie Smollett was caught faking a hate crime, there were already signs of a man willing to blur the line between truth and fiction. Jussie Smollett's name used to carry weight in Hollywood. He was rising fast, praised for his talent, his activism, and his voice. But today, his name sparks a different reaction. One you don't bounce back from, because even though his conviction was overturned, his reputation never recovered. The public saw the rope, the tears, and the press conferences. They watched the story explode, then collapse, all in real time. And even as Jussie maintains his innocence, insisting he never lied, never staged anything, most people aren't listening anymore. To his supporters, he's a victim of a broken system. To his critics, he's the face of false victimhood in the social media era. And to everyone else, he's the cautionary tale of what happens when attention becomes more important than truth. Even Jussie seems to know it. People can say what they want about you. They can even put you behind bars, but they can't control my mind. They can't control my spirit. They can't control the knowledge I have of who I am. That kind of defiance still echoes in his interviews. But it's not enough to change the past. Not enough to erase the memes, the headlines, the court footage. Not enough to rebuild the career that was lost. Because no matter how many films he makes, no matter how long the public forgets, there will always be one moment that defines him. The night he said he was attacked, and the day the world found out he made it all up. Anyway, that's it for this video, folks. Bye.